Well, it's Talking Pints, but tonight's going to be a very reflective Talking Pints, as often we are when we have a drink with each other. I'm joined by Lee Sansum. Lee, welcome to Talking Pints.
Thank you.
And it is a pretty extraordinary anniversary, isn't it? It was just before midnight, 25 years ago, that fatal accident. But before we get to that, you, soldier, Royal Military Police.
Yes.
And then doing all sorts of extraordinary things in Northern Ireland, sort of working undercover. And that was a damn dangerous job, wasn't it?
It was, Nigel, yeah. It was a war.
It was.
That we couldn't call a war, because it was on British soil, of course, because it would have damaged our economy. And, you know, the amount of service people and civilians and police that were killed there, it was thousands.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
We've kind of forgotten how bad it was.
We have, and at the height of, we call it the Troubles. That's a British thing to say, isn't it? It's a bit of trouble.
Yeah, a little bit of difficulty.
And sometimes, you know, I was sat in Belfast, or I worked in Belfast and down in South Armagh, bandit country, as we called it then. And you'd hear all the explosions and everything going on, and you're thinking, nobody on mainland understands what's going on because it wasn't reported.
Well,
and then,
maybe it was underreported.
It was underreported, but I think it went on for that long. Everybody lost the... You know...
Yeah, a little bit like maybe Ukraine is today. People sort of hear it, they switch off a little bit.
Yeah, it went on for so long. And don't forget the soldiers there. I could be in Belfast in the morning on patrol, fearing you were going to get shot at. In the afternoon, I could be sat in a pub in Manchester. And there was no decompression, there was nothing.
And all within the United Kingdom. No.
Crazy times.
And you go on and you're a martial arts coach and you become a bodyguard to the Hollywood stars. How does that happen?
Yes, it's... I think when I left the military in 1995, I'd worked with the military police, and they're well known for doing close protection in the military. They took over from the SAS, who handed it over to the military police, you know, years ago, and they refined the close protection world. So we had various close protection roles within the military police. And I knew a lot of my friends, you know, they served all over the world. So when I came out, I was determined not to go into security, but I just didn't. The transition to civilian life then was...
It's a pretty natural place to go, isn't it?
So I tried to do a couple of jobs. I just couldn't hold them down. So somebody said, look, there's a job going with the Al Fayed family.
Yep.
And Paul Hanley Greaves, who I'd known in the military, he was head of security. So I gave him a call, and he said, look, come down. And he said, look, Lee, you know, I need you on my team, and that's when I started working in the close protection industry, the bodyguard industry.
Yeah, and you did a bit of work with Sylvester Stallone and all sorts of people over the years.
Yes, yeah, lots of different things. I've worked with. I've done some crazy stuff. I've been so lucky that I've done a diverse a role, I would say, from all sorts of stuff, from just crazy stuff.
And then it finishes up with you being a bodyguard, close protection for one of the most famous women in the world.
Yes.
And her kids.
Yes.
And her boyfriend.
Yes.
Dodi Fayed.
Yes. Yeah.
And, you know, there you are. You're in the south of France. It's July 1997. And you seem to form... Well, it seems to me that you must have formed a remarkable bond with Diana, with the boys.
Yes.
Is that because you were a daredevil? I know this report that you were diving off the top of the yacht. Is that true?
It is true, yeah.
What happened? Come and tell us.
So it was during the end of the trip, and I was on the top deck of the super yacht, the Jonicle.
So a long way up.
Massive boat. And I was talking to the princes, and Harry was a cheeky, naughty boy. And I loved him, and he reminded me of my son, who was a couple of years younger than Harry. And he said, you know, Lee, would you jump off this thing? I said, well, of course I would. Why? He said, well, jump off it. And I said, well, I'm not going to jump off it. I'm in my gear. We're ready to get you guys off onto the plane home. And he said, well, how much would you do it for? And I said, well, 200 quid.
How old is he at the time then?
He would have been
12 or whatever.
Yeah, my boy was 10, I think. And he just disappeared. And all of a sudden I heard from down below, Lee, and it was the princess. Is it true you're going to jump off? I'm like, no. And she says, I've got the 200 quid. And I'm like, no, I've got to do it, haven't I now? So the captain of the boat, he was there, and he's like, Lee, you've got to be careful, because he had all the lines out. And
I mean,
he said, you've got to jump there.
Must be a long way down.
Yeah, because we were in the dock. But I'd said I'd do it, so anyway, off I jumped, and everyone was like clapping, and I came up, and the princess and Mr. Fayed was there, and he's just looking at me going, I knew you'd do it. And I got my 200 quid.
There you go, good. Well, it's a heck of a story. Well, you must have left the most extraordinary impression, because at the end of all this, there is a letter from Kensington Palace dated the 23rd of July, 1997. Dear Lee, yours sincerely, Diana, written in her own hand. And it says, William, Harry and I very much wanted to thank you for taking such good care of us during our stay in Saint-Tropez. We realise that our presence, along with that of the media, made your job enormously difficult, and for that we apologise. However, we all had a magical 10 days, which would not have been possible without your invaluable contribution, and for that we all send our warmest possible thanks. It's not just signed by Diana, it's signed by the boys as well.
How nice.
That is a remarkable thing, isn't it?
It's one of the last probably the last letter that all three of them signed. But how nice was that, Nigel?
Unbelievable.
So I'm at home, and I've looked after a lot of people with egos and all this kind of stuff. And there's that lady,
amazing,
with all that stuff going on, and she has time to do that.
You must have left the most remarkable impression upon her. Now, that's dated July 23rd, so we're only going forward just shy of 5 weeks until tonight.
I know. It's
25 years ago. Now, you weren't there, were you, on the night?
I wasn't in Paris, no. But, I could have been. We drew straws to see who would go.
So you could have been there.
So you had Trevor Rees-Jones.
Yes.
Great guy, great operator, a friend of mine. And then you had Kes Wingfield, who was there. There was two of them, obviously, to look after the princess as well. And Kes was we'd put him in solitary on one of the boats because he had the flu. So he didn't spread it to the team and the guests. And there was about 5 of us, the bodyguards, as you were saying. And Mr. Fayed said, look, we need somebody to go with the princess around on the Mediterranean trip. And we didn't want to go because we were tired. We'd had a long summer. So we thought we'd draw straws. So we put, so there's 5 of us there. We put 6 straws in because Kes was one, and he was on the boat. And one of the guys drew the short straw, and he said, "I guess that's Kes's then."
Yeah.
So we all said, "Right, Kes, you're going."
Yeah.
So so it could have been anybody.
Could have been anybody. Now, as it turns out, there's all sorts of conspiracy theory, but one thing that I'm struck by is Diana. During that period you were with her, there was the Versace murder, wasn't there?
Yes, there was, yeah.
And the friendship there was very strong?
Yes, extremely, yeah.
And she was worried for her own safety?
She was, yeah. Yeah, she was worried. And when she spoke to me about it, I just bumped into her on the top of the Jonicle, the super yacht.
Yeah.
And she turned round, and she'd obviously been crying a lot. And we'd been talking about Versace that morning. Everybody thought he'd been assassinated by a hitman at the time. It turned out to be something slightly different. So at that time, we thought it was a professional hit, and everybody thought that in the world. And she turned round, and then she said to me, "Lee, have you heard about my friend?" And which I had, and I said, "Yes, I have," and she spoke about him, and then she said, "Do you think they'll do that to me?"
They?
Yes, and with real fear and vulnerability. So I'm now on this top deck with windows similar to this, with windows, and you've got all paparazzi, and she walks towards me. And we're human beings, right? You would just want to hug somebody and just say, "Look, you're okay." I couldn't do that. You imagine if the paparazzi So I took a step back and assured her that we had a great professional team. We were going to look after her, and kind of made her feel a little bit better. And as she was feeling a bit better, I said, "Look, I've got to go now, and I made a sharp exit. But
she was being trailed, wasn't she, by British security?
Yes.
I mean, in that tunnel.
Yeah.
In that tunnel, and I listen. I don't go along with any of the conspiracy theories that she was knocked off and all this, but I absolutely don't. But the two motorbikes, one going incredibly quickly, that may well have been the cause of that accident. I don't know,
we never know.
We don't know, but we never ever identified who was riding those motorbikes.
This is the thing. I gave evidence at the coroner's inquest, and my evidence of me speaking to people on high-powered motorbikes in Saint-Tropez who were former military. Now, when I meet former military, the language that you speak, you know they're former military, and they were former military. There's me and a friend of mine. We'd blocked the road to stop them coming down so the princess could get on the boat and go away with the princes. And it was all, I had this master plan on this small road. We opened the doors of the armoured vehicle so they couldn't get past. Now, you know, this is the thing that people don't understand. Our security services and our intelligence services are the best in the world. And they keep us safe, and they do an amazing job. Now, could you imagine that...
They're very good at hiding too, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what. This is the thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you know, they weren't there in Saint-Tropez, according to the powers that be, or in Paris. Now, the thing is, imagine if the head of the intelligence service or the head of the royal family or whoever said, do you know where Princess Diana is at this moment in time and heir to the throne? And they went, well, we haven't got a clue.
Yeah, of course.
It's ridiculous.
It's of course.
But
so it's possible that accident was caused by those motorbikes. It is possible.
I don't think so, because our security services are so professional. But what I do believe is that somebody was there that saw what happened, and they were part of either the French, ours, or a combination, and they were there, and they couldn't seem to be there. And I think that's caused some anomalies in the investigation, which the conspiracy theorists just jump on. And Lee, I believe it was just an accident.
No, so do I. Lee, you say if you were there, you could have saved her life.
Well, this is the thing. If I'd have been there, I had a big thing about seatbelts. Mr. Fired would sack you if he saw a member of his family without a seatbelt on. It was a big thing. When I first drove Dodie, he got in the car, he hated seatbelts. And probably he lived a lot of the time in the States, where it's pretty not mandatory. But I told him, asked him to put the seatbelt on, and he said, look, Lee, I'm not putting the seatbelt on. So I said, well, I'm not driving the car. He said, no, you're driving the car, you tell me where you're going to take me. He was in London. And I said, well, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to phone your father, and you can speak to him. And he went, seatbelt on. Well, every time I saw him, now I've worked over in the war zones in Somalia, Libya, you know, where there's rockets flying at us and rounds being, but I ensure everybody must have the seatbelts on.
She wasn't wearing a seatbelt.
Unfortunately.
If you'd been there, you'd have made sure she did.
Yeah, as I would if I drove you or your family.
No, I get it. Tomorrow, September the 1st, you've got a book coming out. Tell us about it.
Yeah. Well, I wrote the book in lockdown. It's about my life. There's a couple of chapters about the princess in there, but we all know everybody loved the princess. And it's about my life.
There we go.
And all the various things I've done all over the world, in security and in martial arts, and
well, you've done plenty.
Nice love story in there as well.
Well, to say, Lee, thank you for joining me on Talking Pints.
Thank you for having me.